Manchester United look set to appoint Erik Ten Hag as their manager, or so it's been reported, and I'm going to be chatting to Mark Ogden from ESPN, who broke the news story first. Yes, guys and girls, welcome back to Stretford, Paddock. My name is Jordan, and we're going to be joined exclusively by ESPN's senior writer, Mark Ogden, who broke the breaking news that Manchester United are set to appoint Erik Ten Hag as their new permanent manager, taking over from Ralf Ragnick for the start of next season. He joined me a little bit ago to talk all things Erik Ten Hag and what we should be expecting from our new potential Dutch manager. So, Mark, first and foremost, I hope you're well. Just talk to us about the process of announcing news from your sources, such as a manager agreement being in place for Manchester United.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any secret that we know that United are looking for a manager. So anyone that covers United has to really try and find out who the next manager is going to be. And it's not been too hard to realise that the shortlist was down to two men, Pochettino and Ten Hag. And I just got told, what day was it now? I can't remember what day it was. Wednesday, was it? That it's going to be Ten Hag. You know, everything's in place. Just needs him to sign it now. But you know, until it's signed, anything can happen really. But the process that's been taken, that they've taken charge of in terms of finding a new manager to get his credentials, find out what he's going to cost, what his philosophy is going to be, that has pointed to Ten Hag as being the best candidate. So that's been passed up to Richard Arnold and Joe Glazer. So unless they decide to rip up the process that they've signed off, it'll be Ten Hag. But like I say, you can never, ever say anything in this business because we've seen in the past that things get to the 11th hour and things change. But as far as I'm concerned, as far as a lot of people are concerned now, that Ten Hag is being lined up to be the next United manager.
Yeah, anything can change, as you mentioned. But when you get confirmation from your sources that it looks like Manchester United are set to appoint a new manager, obviously in Erik Ten Hag, is there sort of any pressure? Of course, you and Rob Dawson were the first to break that news. But is there sort of any pressure from your end where you think, I need to get this story out really, really quickly to be the first one to get out there? Or is it just a sense of, right, we've got that information now, let's just get it out to everybody?
Yeah, I mean, there is pressure. There's pressure to put it out there. I mean, there's pressure from the people you work with, because obviously we are a news organisation, but there's also like a professional pride element to it as well, whereby, you know, if you've got a story, you're either one of those journalists who hasn't got the courage or convictions to go with it, or you're prepared to put your neck on the block, and that's what happens. You have to kind of, if you've got a story and you trust the people are telling you, you have to go with it. Now, of course, there's a time element to it, because you probably noticed on Wednesday that once we'd gone live with our stuff, about 10, 15 minutes later, others went with it as well. And you know, I was at Chelsea on Wednesday night, and I spoke to a couple of the guys who wrote it as well, and they were saying, look, they were ready to go, but they just didn't have that final piece of the jigsaw. So, you know, by no means were we the only ones that were working on it. You'll find that a lot of journalists get the same sort of information. It's just, like I said, it's a jigsaw puzzle, or you've got 9 pieces or you've got 10. We just had more information than others, and we had, you know, some journalists won't write a story. Some journalists will wait until others do it because it's a safer thing to do, isn't it? Because what's that line? Is it the Ian Brown song? Nobody ever notices if you're never right or wrong. Well, if you're never wrong, then you don't put your neck on the block. So it's a tough job being a journalist, because there's always things that can happen. People will always say fake news, or that's not true, or, you know, if events change, where all the guys that cover Manchester, they're all good reporters, or you know, they'll all have done transfer stories which would have been correct on a Tuesday morning, but by Thursday they're not correct because something's happened. So things change. But as things are at the time you write the story, you have to be confident that it's right, and then you go with it. But like I say, no journalist has ever got every story right, and the ones that get every story wrong aren't covering Man United.
So let's say Ten Hag is the candidate. That's confirmed. Should Manchester United fans be expecting, what should they be expecting as a sort of time frame in between the news that you've got and the club making an official announcement? Are we expecting sort of during the season now, or at the end of the season in the summer? When would we expect a sort of official announcement from the club about the appointment of a new manager?
This is a tricky one, this. I mean, and before I get onto this point, you asked about the process of going with a story like that. We do actually put it to Man United. We did actually go to United to tell us, we're doing this story, giving you a heads up, giving you kind of the right of reply. And United's response was, look, thanks for the heads up. We're not changing our stance of, you know, it's an ongoing process. But, you know, for me, the classic one, there was no, don't go near that, no denial. So just to give your your listeners and your audience an idea, we do actually go at the club. We don't just write things without just any kind of comeback. We do give the club the right reply, out of courtesy as well as anything else, just because, you're dealing with it on a regular basis. But in terms of the timescale, I think, in an ideal world, United would get it done as soon as possible. It suits United to say, this is going to be our manager, this is what's happening, and then let's get on with it, because they want to take away the uncertainty. The players want to know what's going on, the fans want to know what's going on, the sponsors want to know what's going on, and the guy who's going to come in wants to know that the whole world knows, because then the announcement's out of the way and it's all done with. But we have to take into account that, Ajax have still got a title to win in Holland, so they might not be too happy with their coach being flagged up as leaving. But I think it's getting to the point now where it might actually help Ajax for people to say, look, this is the situation. Ten Hag's leaving at the end of the season. He's got a month to go. Let's focus on the league. It suits everyone, I think, to get it done quickly. But United may have a different idea. They might want to wait until the end of the season. Look, I think one thing that I've learned with United over the past is that they tend to put out good news stories on the back of a bad story. So if they lose at Everton this weekend, you might find that by Monday morning they'll announce a new manager. So I remember the classic was when they were not taken to the Champions League by Bayern Munich in 2010, and everyone was talking about, what happens next, where they're going to go now, and hey presto, Chicharito was announced the day after, just to move the story on. So United might be waiting for a bad result, so they might be waiting too long, as this season has shown. So it all depends on the situation at the time, what suits the people involved. But yeah, from a United perspective, they don't really want to be waiting until June to announce the new manager for next season.
I mean, we're used to seeing throwback goals, so let's hope that we don't lose at Everton first and foremost. But let's imagine that Erik Ten Hag has been appointed as Manchester United's manager. Of course, we're the biggest spenders in Europe over the last decade or so. We've not had a Premier League title since 2013. Is Erik Ten Hag, in your opinion, the right man to be taking Manchester United back to where they should be, challenging the likes of, right now, Liverpool and Manchester City at the top of the Premier League and in other cup competitions?
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest, I've got my doubts. I'm not sure if you had a completely open field and you could pick the best man for the job, I think you'd probably put Pep at the top, Jurgen Klopp second or joint top, Thomas Tuchel, Julian Nagelsmann. That's four. They're four of the best coaches out there. And then once you get beyond that, you get to the shortlist that United have got, because you're not going to get the best coach. So that's why they had a shortlist of Pochettino, Ten Hag, Luis Enrique, and Lopetegui at Sevilla. I was a bit surprised Lopetegui was on it, because for me, I just think you're getting another version of Unai Emery, and it didn't really work out at Arsenal. So, but he's not a factor anymore. So, Ten Hag, he's 52, never managed in a big league before, never managed big players, and now if he turns up at United, he's going to be managing the biggest club in the biggest league in the world, which brings an absolute shed load of pressure every day. So, can he deal with that? We don't know, and that for me is a bit of a concern, because if you look at some examples from the past, I think David Moyes, when he came to United, he had a similar reputation of a guy that builds teams, was in his early 50s at the time, and everyone thought he'd done enough to earn his chance. But the step from Everton to United was too big for him, too big for everybody. And I just wonder whether Ten Hag is of a similar situation. I kind of hope not, because I think we're all sick of writing that United are rubbish. I'd rather write that United are great and winning things again. But I don't know. That's where I doubt it. I'm not quite sure he's got Pochettino's credentials, in the sense that he knows the Premier League. He has a track record of managing big players. And let's be honest, people have rewritten history a bit about Pochettino, saying that he's been a bit of a failure. Well, no other manager's taken Tottenham to a Champions League final. And for 2 or 3 years, Tottenham were a regular top 4 team. He built a great young team there. Harry Kane, Dele Alli, brought Heung-min Son. So I think it's a bit, like I said, rewriting history to suggest that Pochettino's damaged goods. For me, he'd have been my choice. I think he's got all the credentials. He's a coach that will put an arm around players and cajole them, and I think that this United squad needs that at the moment. But Ten Hag is, one thing he's got over Pochettino is that he hasn't failed. He's got a successful kind of graph. If you look at his career trajectory, he wins. So, but Holland to the Premier League is a massive step. So that's why I've got my doubts about him. I just, look at Andre Villas-Boas. He came from Porto, big reputation, winning things in not the biggest league in the world, came to the Premier League, just sank without trace. So it's definitely a gamble by United.
Do you think, as you mentioned before, you just alluded to Andre Villas-Boas, I think of David Moyes when you mentioned that when he first came to United, they did very well at the sort of smaller stature of clubs, and they've moved to a club like Manchester United and its stature, and they've obviously struggled. You mentioned before about if you think you've got your doubts now. How big is the gamble, considering Mauricio Pochettino was out there, he's managed Paris Saint-Germain. He's had a good pedigree with Tottenham, despite people calling him a serial bottler, if you will, because of what happened in Ligue 1 last season. Do you think Manchester United have gone with Erik Ten Hag just purely because of the fact, well, not purely because of the fact, but on top of the fact that he's cheaper? You think of the compensation fees that they're paying. Ten Hag was, I think, 1.7 million in terms of releasing him from Ajax. Mauricio Pochettino would have been about £15 million. Do you think that's actually come into play? Or do you think there's been a switch in sort of mentality where John Murtough and Darren Fletcher, who've almost been leading the managerial search, are making a decision, or their sort of offerings, strictly speaking in football terms?
Yeah, well, I mean, John Murtough and Darren Fletcher will be given the opportunity to find the manager. And I don't think they'll have gone out there thinking, what's the compensation figure? But ultimately, that isn't to them. That's up to the Glazers. So one thing we do know is that the Glazers don't pay compensation for managers. They didn't pay compensation for Moyes, for Van Gaal, for Mourinho. They paid a very small, I think about £1 million for Solskjaer. So I think they'd rather not. And ultimately, if they're taking 60, 70, 80 million pounds out of the club every season, if they take another 20 million pounds out of the budget to pay for a manager, then that isn't smart business sense. When that money could go towards the wages of a signing, or contribute towards a signing. So it'll be a factor, but I don't think it's the driving factor. And I think there are other elements to it. But I think they like the fact that Ten Hag, develops younger players. He's got a team that plays attacking football, and he's a winner. I think what United want to do, they want to identify the next big thing, but I don't think you can with the next big thing when you're 52 years old. But, I think it's a gamble. I keep going back to it is a gamble, but they've done the kind of the due diligence on this, and they've made sure that they've got everything ticked. And I think with Pochettino, I think there's a couple of other elements that people haven't really addressed, in the sense that there is a concern, I think, within the game that Pochettino's like to float around with other clubs. I mean, he's never hidden his kind of love for Real Madrid. He doesn't play down talk that he might go back to Tottenham one day. He's never downplayed encouraging talk that he's going to go to United. So I think if you're Man United and you think, let's go for Pochettino, right now they could be in a situation where they're getting everything ready, getting all the ducks in a row for Pochettino. Then the season ends. Real Madrid says to Carlo Ancelotti, sorry, Carlo, but we want to move you on, and Real Madrid come knocking on Pochettino's door. Then United could be left in a situation where they're 9/10 of the way to getting Pochettino, and he clears up to Real Madrid. So that is an element to it, because I won't say they can't trust Pochettino, but I do think there's an element of, is he really, really focused on Man United, or does he really fancy Real Madrid? I don't think there's a situation there with Ten Hag. I think Ten Hag is, I think United, I think he sees it as a great step. I don't think there's going to be a move to Real Madrid. So there's all sorts of elements in this. And I think as well, you have to bring a coach in that will fit to the club's so-called philosophy or blueprint, whatever you want to call it. And United's blueprint going forward is a coach that works with the recruitment staff and the whole kind of, this horrible word, this organic kind of holistic culture where everyone works together. Now, he's done that at Ajax. Pochettino's done it in the past, but he's always kind of agitated Pochettino for a bit more control over players. So Ten Hag might be less vocal like that. He might be more prepared to work in a system. But if he is going to come and work in a system that has a kind of a recruitment team that has a big say in the players, he has to make sure that recruitment team is good, and it's not at the moment. And that for me, if I was Ten Hag, I'd be thinking, before I get to Man United, I want some assurances on who's going to be signing players, who's going to be attracting the players, and what we're going to do with them. Because there's a little story that I was told earlier this season when Ragnick came to the club. He asked the scouting team what sort of reports they'd had on Christopher Nkunku at RB Leipzig, and basically they're shaking their head saying not on our list. And Ragnick was like, come on, this guy's the best young player in Germany right now. He's going to play for France soon. He's scoring goals from midfield. He is a player that everybody should know. And he wasn't a player that United were actively looking at. So that'd set big alarm bells ringing for me if Man United are looking at the best young player in the Bundesliga. So, yeah, Ten Hag, for me, when he's spoken to United, I hope he's interviewed them as much as they've interviewed him, because if he comes in with his eyes closed, he's going to have a problem.
Just as you mentioned then, if people who are up top at Manchester United sort of thinking, we're not bothered about Nkunku, who's getting 30-odd goal contributions in something like 35 games or whatever, do you reckon when Ralf Ragnick obviously goes up top at the end of the season, or what we believe he'll be doing, do you think his advisory role will be playing a part in Erik Ten Hag's decision-making? Because if the fact that he's come in for 6 months and they're going, well, we're not really bothered about what your transfer targets are because you're not going to be here, you're not going to be making the decisions, are they really going to take Erik Ten Hag seriously because he's the next permanent manager?
Well, hopefully, because that's his job, and he's the guy whose neck is on the block, and he's the guy that's charged of making the team better. So if the guy who's charge of making the team better doesn't get the players that he wants, and it's not going to last very long, is it? And I think, the Ragnick situation, nobody quite knows what's happening there. I think he said a few uncomfortable truths in recent weeks. I think that a lot of fans have enjoyed that he's actually come out and said that we need this, we need that. Some players aren't doing this, and he's been pretty honest. Now, has he been honest because he knows he's not hanging around and he can upset people, or is he being honest because he's doing something on the club's behalf to say, look, we need to shake this up a little bit? But I don't know what he does next season, because if he stays around, it does kind of get in the way of what John Mertz and Darren Fletcher are doing. I don't quite see how it fits. I don't see how you can accommodate a guy that's in the past he's worked as a sporting director, technical director. There'd be a lot of crossover. I think there'd be one or two collisions in terms of people getting out of their lane, as they say. So I don't know if Ragnick will be there next season. Nobody knows yet, and nobody's kind of defined what his role will be. But hopefully, he's got a knowledge of the Bundesliga, he's got a knowledge of emerging players. But then he shouldn't be the only person at Man United with that knowledge. And you'd think that the backroom team, the recruitment team, would be better because of it. But it's a bit of a mystery. United's recruitment team the last 10 years now, I think we're talking to Fergie time, it's never been great. And the deals that they've had ready to do that they haven't done, Jude Bellingham, Erling Haaland, they had these guys sat in a room, never got them. They went to Borussia Dortmund instead. And I know Dortmund's a great club and a club that offers a pathway, but it's not Man United. If you've got players of that quality and you sat in front of them and you say, sign for us at Borussia Dortmund, how on earth do they end up at Borussia Dortmund? So again, that's an issue that Ten Hag has to be wary of, because that would never happen at Liverpool or Man City. They won't allow those players to disappear to a club in Germany that can't compete financially with them. So, yeah, I think we're looking at the manager, we're looking at the players, we're looking at the chief exec, but that recruitment team has to raise its game an awful lot to actually get United back to where they need to be.
Well, it's happened in the past, hasn't it? Even with Van Gaal, Mourinho, they've stated players that they want, and it's just simply not happened. But if we're sticking on signings, who do you think's currently in Erik Ten Hag's mind? Because obviously, being Manchester United taking a manager from Ajax, we're automatically linked with the likes of Jurriën Timber at centre-half, Anthony on the wing, and most recently as well, Ruben Neves from Wolves. He's been linked with us for God knows how long. But who do you think's currently going to be in Erik Ten Hag's mind when he comes in? Will it be sort of already established players, sort of like what Mourinho wanted at the time? Or do you think he's going to be taking in youth like he did at Ajax, or like he has been doing at Ajax for so long?
It's an interesting one because he doesn't really sign many players at Ajax. He's not really got a track record of bringing players in, because obviously it's done, by the team, the backroom team, or certainly the technical team at Ajax. So we don't know. But I do think United will be a bit wary of signing too many players from Ajax or PSV or Feyenoord, because let's be honest, Donny van de Beek has been a disaster. Maybe not his own fault because he's not played enough, but he hasn't cut it at United or at Everton. So that's one recent example of a player coming from the Dutch league. Memphis Depay, another one that didn't really cut it. So I think people realise that it's a massive step from Dutch football to the Premier League, and that's why they tend to go to Germany first, or even Italy. I wouldn't be confident in a player coming from Holland right now, because it's a big drop off. So we don't know what Ten Hag wants. I think what we know is that certain positions that United have to address, they have to get a centre forward, because Cavani's going to leave. Ronaldo's 37 and he's beginning to show his age. Anthony Martial might come back, but let's be honest, he's no use to anybody. No use to Seville, no use to United. Marcus Rashford, we don't quite know what's going on there. Even if he stays, is he the player that people thought he was? Probably not. So they definitely need a centre forward. They need a defensive midfielder. They need somebody to, be the main guy there so that Fred and McTominay can be rotated. They need a right back. That, goes without saying that Dalot got all the effort and energy in the world, but he's not good enough, and Wan-Bissaka's not good enough. So, but they're the three priorities, I think. Beyond that, they obviously need a centre half. I think they need a goalkeeper as well, because David De Gea is not in the same league anymore as people like Edison and Alisson. Is a goalkeeper from the past. He doesn't come off his line, but you can't do it all in one summer. You have to prioritise and get the players that you need in that to fill the real kind of problem. So, I keep seeing or hearing that United are after Harry Kane, Declan Rice. Of course they want those players, but that's going to cost you straight away £200 million at least, and United haven't got that money. They haven't got the money to do that. And also, let's remember they're losing Paul Pogba, probably on a free transfer, Jesse Lingard on a free transfer, Juan Mata on a free transfer, Cavani. So you've got four players going straight away that's not going to bring any money in. You're going to save on the wage bill, but they're not bringing any money in. So they've got four holes to fill with no money coming in, and also these big issues to address as well. So that for me is what Ten Hag's issue will be. How does he fill these holes? Does he look at players that he knows? he's not going to bring Sebastian Haller, I don't think, from Ajax to United, because he had a tough time at West Ham in the Premier League. Darwin Núñez is a player that's been mentioned that he's at Benfica. Looks like he's a decent bet, but is he in the same bracket as Haaland, as Kane, as Lewandowski, as Benzema? Is he? No, nowhere near. They could have made an effort to sign Vlahovic in January, but Juventus did that. That for me was an obvious one for United, that they could have got it done, quite a reasonable fee, young player, but didn't do it. So Ten Hag has to find the solutions to these problems, but I'm pretty sure right now these solutions are being looked at by the recruitment team, and he'll be given a list of players. These are our options. What do you think? He might have somebody out of left field that we don't know about, but I think the players that Ten Hag will want are the players that we're all aware of already.
So to summarise, not a lot then. Not a lot then, is it? Honestly.
He's got a big job, put it that way. He's got a massive job.
Definitely.
Might keep awake at night thinking, God, am I doing the right thing going to Man United? Jesus, all the things we've got to do.
You just mentioned then, do you reckon that's part of the problem, the fact that Erik Ten Hag's coming into Manchester United, all but confirmed, and Manchester United going, well, these are the players we want to buy, take your pick out of this list. Do you not think that that he should be coming to the club and saying, these are the players who I want to bring in, as opposed to them going, well, these are our options, you can't pick from anyone else that you want?
Yeah, it doesn't tend to work like that anymore in the kind of the old school way where a manager gets what he wants. I mean, because we saw it with, like I said, you mentioned before, Mourinho and Van Gaal wanting players and not getting them. I do think that a manager now is more accepting of the need to work with the club, but I'd be asking questions of who are these people at the club that are finding these players and why they're not looking at people like Nkunku and why they, making mistakes. Van der Beek was a player that Solskjaer didn't want. He wasn't on his list, but they still signed him. And to be fair to Solskjaer, was right there. And I'm not quite sure why they signed him, who the people that decided he was a good signing, because it's not exactly an area of the pitch that they needed to improve or they needed to add to. It was just a strange signing. So, Wan-Bissaka, we kept being told that there were 804 right backs on the list and decided from him. I don't think the manager at the time looked at 804 right backs. It was the people at the club. So, yeah, Ten Hag will come in, begin a list of targets, and he might say, don't like him, don't like him, don't like him. What about him? And then the scouting team will be asked to draw up their reports. And see, this is the complicated thing. If Ten Hag comes in and says, look, I want to sign Anthony. Right, okay, he's on your list. No, why not? This is why we don't think he does this, does that. So if Ten Hag is saying, I definitely want Anthony, then he'll have to state a case to the club and say, this is what I think his value can be. This is what I think he can bring in. And then it'll be up to the people upstairs to decide whether that works. And that, an example, it's going back, I think 5 years now, when Mourinho was desperate to sign Ivan Perisic, absolutely desperate. He thought he was absolutely perfect to play on the left-hand side. And it boiled down to the fact that United, right to Ed Woodward, thought he was too old, and it fell down because United's valuation was £3 million short of Inter Milan's. Didn't do it. Now, 5 years on, Perisic is still ripping up in the Champions League, and he's had a great 5 years. I mean, Arturo Vidal, another one. I think it was 2013 or even 14. His knees have gone. No point standing in. Okay. 2022.
Still going now.
And the Champions League. So this is it. So there's been a lot of players over the years that United have turned their nose apart for whatever reason, who've gone on to be really good, and the players they've signed have been less good, shall we say.
I think you're right in that, less good, but we'll see. We'll see what he does in the summer. Of course, if he comes in. Mark, thank you very much for joining us on the channel. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, and we hope to welcome you back on the channel in future.
No problems, mate.
So there you have it. Erik Ten Hag is set to become Manchester United manager, but we already knew that. But it was lovely to have a little bit of insight into what and how Erik Ten Hag is going to be operating when he comes into Old Trafford. And to be honest, I'm pretty excited about it. I know he sort of had his doubts, but I'm pretty bloody excited about it because we're finally going to have a little bit of stability and a permanent manager in place that we can all get excited about. At least I can hope so. Anyway, don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts on what you think Erik Ten Hag is going to be doing in the transfer window and how you think he's going to do as Manchester United manager. And don't forget to subscribe to Stretford Paddock. We're trying to get to 700k by the end of the season. And of course, only with your help, we can do that. I've been Jordan Simpson for Stretford Paddock. We'll see you lot in a bit.